Okay. All right, so it looks like the meeting's now being recorded. So I could certainly provide you that meeting recording after we're finished. And I do want it to be kind of a discussion, so, even though we're recording it, don't hesitate to interrupt me. It's not, I don't have 90 minutes of talking. I want to be presenting and, definitely interrupt me and let me know if you have questions or anything. So let me get started. So first, our topic here is mobile inspection software and UST mobile inspection software specifically. So the first question is, what is a mobile electronic UST inspection tool? This is the kind of hardware that most of the states that I'm working with are using in the field. The device on the left is the Panasonic FZG1. It's the kind of device that has in it a Wi-Fi radio, a GPS, there's a cell radio to get to the internet with, there's a camera built into it, there's a Bluetooth radio built into it that allows you to connect to peripheral devices like a mobile printer so that you could print an enforcement letter or an inspection report in the field and deliver it directly while you're doing the inspection. So that's kind of the, and these devices now are very fast. They've got a lot of storage in them, and they are, this one in particular is very rugged and very designed to be used in the field as opposed to a laptop or an iPad sort of device. These are more rugged devices. So along with the hardware is the software, and the software is what MobileWright Solutions provides, my company. So it's the very specific customizations, custom screens that would collect the information that you need, allow you to cite violations and draw site diagrams and generate very specific reports with your report templates and that sort of thing. So this is a list of the states that MobileWright has implemented inspection software for. A lot of these states we've implemented UST and AST for. A lot have we've implemented the UST registration database or the loss tracking database or an enforcement database. But all of these sites, all of these specific states, agencies have a UST inspection program that MobileWright created for them, and they're all still in use as of now. So we started with. Oh, go ahead.
Do you know if any of the states use Tempo?
No, none of these states use Tempo.
Okay.
And I've had that question in the past of, can we integrate with a enterprise class database like Tempo? And each one of these programs has their own database. A couple of them we rewrote the database for the District of Columbia and for Connecticut, but most of them have their own existing what they call a site information database that has all the sites that have environmental interests within the state, whether or not they have USTs. So these sites are all shared between the different programs, just like in the Tempo database. So I think the integration piece, that's kind of the hard work of a project like this, but that's something that we could do with the Tempo database. All right, so now I'm listing all these states as using the MobileWright UST inspection software, but really what they've got is very, very customized software built to fit the needs that they have, to tailor to their specific regulations in a lot of cases. Most of these states have their own regulations where I think South Carolina and Idaho are probably the only two that are following directly the CFR 280 regulations. But they all have very specific back-end environments and very specific technology, IT infrastructures that the program has been customized to fit into. And of course, they all do their businesses slightly differently, where the way they schedule inspections or the process where they go by doing their file reviews is very different in each one of these states. So what MobileWright is implementing for these states is a very customized solution. So from a mobile inspection software, these are what we think are the expected benefits. Very important is the improved data quality. The quality in a lot of the registration databases was good a long time ago when the site's registered, but over time the data degrades, and just through multiple conversions and problems with the database and incorrect values on notification forms and that sort of thing. The data quality in a lot of the registrations databases isn't great, and we find that when inspectors are out in the field, if they're using a pen and clipboard to note these differences, a lot of times those changes don't get back into the main database, where an inspection tablet would allow them to make the changes directly in the database and then upload their results real time. So the biggest benefit that a lot of the programs are looking for is more inspections, where the EPA is making more and more demands about how many inspections need to be done per year and per, with the 3-year cycle. And I don't know what your cycle is, but a lot of the states I work with are on the 3-year cycle. Some are 2 years, some are 1 year even. But there's just been so many more inspections being done. And and some of the quality sort of benefits are consistent enforcement, where if everyone's using the same software that's designed to enforce the rules the same way, all the sites across the state are then having enforcement applied consistently. And because things are electronic and we can automatically generate documents, we have much better documented inspections. And hopefully through the demonstrations, you'll see these benefits. All right, cool. Okay, can everybody still hear me well?
Yes.
Great. All right, so we're going to look first at, where are we going to look? Okay. So what we're looking at is the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Controls Violation Manager tool. So what this is a website that doesn't run on the tablet. It runs at the back-end system, and it's just a website that has all the regulations and all the violations and all the different codes that are used to run the system. But it allows a compliance manager to configure the system without asking for a programmer to make changes to add a new violation or to modify the language of a particular corrective action and that sort of thing. So we're looking at South Carolina, and South Carolina, as I mentioned, is a state that has decided to be no more strict than the federal regulations. So you'll see CFR 280 regulations being cited here, and here's the description, the actual text of the regulations. So along with the regulations are violations that cite those regulations. So for instance, this 2010E requires you to have a permit, so the violation would be operating a particular site without a permit. Some of the violations that we'll see today, for example, are 2043D, which everyone is very familiar with. I think it's probably 701A4 in your violation list, but it's basically not having their 12 months of release detections specifically for an ATG device. And we'll see that it cites that 40D regulation, and if that regulation is cited, the system will automatically determine that they're out of compliance with the release detection SOC measure. And this is the description that they get for the violation: failure to conduct their release detection properly, and the corrective action is to submit the the monthly results, and then they have to have 8 of the next 12 with the last 2 passing. And if that was a red tag violation or a violation that required delivery prohibition, this option would be checked. So we'll also take a look at one of those red tag violations. 20C1I. So here, failure to provide prevention. That one is being indicated as being a red tag violation. And you'll see that there's very cryptic conditions listed here, which actually allows the logic on the tablet to change. So basically this says if small deliveries, meaning deliveries less than 25 gallons or more, if it doesn't have small deliveries and it doesn't have spill prevention, then they'll get cited for this failure to provide spill prevention. So let's take a look. So this tool is used by the compliance manager back in the main office to set up the system prior to the inspectors going out. The system can be used to add, as new regulations are being added or modified by rule writing and that sort of thing. Additional regulations can be added and additional violations can always be added and modified and removed. So, okay, I just disconnected from the South Carolina VPN. Can everybody still hear me?
Yes.
Great, thanks. Okay, so another tool that's used at the back office prior to the inspection occurring is the inspection scheduler. This specific inspection scheduler is used by the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management. And let's take a look at the monthly view. So what we're seeing is just a view of scheduled inspections for this month. And this is data that I just entered because it's an old database, but it's showing where inspections are going to take place, what type of inspections are going to be taking place, and who's performing those inspections. So I can say, okay, I want to see just inspections for Joe Cunningham, for example. So I would just see that set of inspections, or I could say I just want to see compliance inspections, or I just want to see closure inspections, and the system would filter in that fashion. I can drill into a particular week. That's next week. That's this week, and next week is here. I can reschedule a particular inspection, reassign the inspection, assign this inspection to me, for example. I could create a new inspection. So from 8 till 11:30, I was going to do a closure inspection. I could enter the information here, find a particular facility, just choose one, and choose add. So this tool allows the managers to see who's going to be where, and also if a scheduled sort of task like a closure inspection occurs, is called in where the tank's only going to be out of the ground for a couple of hours before it's carted away. You can look at this tool and see, okay, who's going to be available and who's not available at a particular time on a particular day.
Excuse me, could that be integrated with Outlook?
We have done that in the past. The state of New Hampshire does that, where automatically these things are pushed directly to the inspector's calendar, or we can do it with a shared calendar, and then everybody looks at the shared calendar. But either way, this can work. So, all right. So that's kind of part of the setup to get inspection scheduled and the violation set up. So let's take a look at a particular. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
This is Erin. Can I ask a question about the setup part? Right now, we have all our violations in Tempo. Would there be a way that we can pull from Tempo into that interface?
I can, like for instance, for South Carolina, the state that we're working with, I exported the violations from Tempo, from their, what they call the FS database, their Environmental Facilities Information System database, into the inspection system, but the violations are cross-referenced to the ones that are in their system, so that when an inspection is completed and violations are cited and the inspections uploaded back into the system, those violations are actually pushed back into their main system, so that, you know, if they're using the main facility management system, they see those violations associated with that facility on that date. So there's a kind of a big integration part of this sort of a project, but that would be the goal. If you want to manage your enforcement within the existing set of tools that you've got, that's how we would do it, by doing the integration. I'll show you South Carolina, who does it that way. I'll also show you Idaho, where our software is doing the enforcement part of the process. Any other questions? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Ours would probably be similar to South Carolina's. We would still want to use Tempo to do the enforcement part.
Okay.
So.
All right. Okay, so this is South Carolina's inspection application. As you can see, they have similar types of inspections as Rhode Island. They do compliance inspections, closure inspections. They do 4 different phases of installation. Just checking different things in each of the different phases during installation. And they'll also do a delivery prohibition inspection, where they record the results about tagging a particular facility. So we're going to focus on the compliance inspections today, though. So if we take a look at this particular site and a compliance inspection at this site, we're seeing that the system has already downloaded a lot of information about this facility. So, the address and the coordinates of the facility are available. All the appropriate contacts have been downloaded. The tank information about this facility. The facility has 2 tanks, and it looks like they were installed in 2001 and 2002. And if we drill in a little deeper, we see that tank number 1 actually has 3 different compartments, with regular unleaded, premium, diesel, and the second tank is 1 compartment, and it's got off-road diesel in it. And there's a set of dispensers associated with the facility. Looks like these probably, actually, that set of the first 3 dispensers are associated with the gasoline tanks and the diesel tank, and then there's a dispenser that's associated with the off-road diesel tank. So, we're looking directly at the data here that came out of what they call the FS system, their Environmental Facility Information System, that gets downloaded to the tablet before an inspector goes out. The nice thing about the facility is it actually downloads all the information about all the facilities in the state, so that when you're out in the field, you're not limited to the set of facilities that you don't have to pre-schedule facilities to be inspected. You can pick any facility you want. So, and this data that's being downloaded here can be updated while they're in the field, and then pushed back into that environmental information system, so that the registration information is up to date. So if we came in here and we found that, this particular, the diesel tank doesn't have fiberglass piping, and it has steel piping, or maybe they're temporarily out of use, or the status of the tank is different than what's showing here, or a comment needs to be made. All that information that gets entered here, you're seeing how it turned yellow. It's just indicating that it's different from what's in the main database, and that the main database will be updated with the new information. So anytime you see this yellow function, that's what that means. So,
I have a quick question about that.
Sure, go ahead.
Whenever that happens and someone were to update that, would you be able to look in the main database and see who did it and what they changed it from and when they did it?
Yes, that's, and that's dependent on your back-end database system. In the FS system for South Carolina, absolutely, there's an updated by and an updated date where every time, and there's also a history log so that you can go back and look for that specific facility, all the updates, so if, 3 people updated that tank or that compartment since the last time you looked at it, you could go back and see all 3 of those updates. But we'd have to look into the Tempo system, and I would assume that they have the similar functionality where they indicate who last updated the tank or compartment.
Tempo has a field that says who updated and when it was updated.
Right. And when this system does the integration to Tempo, if that's, if that ends up happening, that's what we'd do, is we'd update that date and we'd indicate that it was the inspector who made that change.
Okay, I was just wondering, because now the way it is, if we make a change like that, it's usually through our main Baton Rouge office, and this would be technically regional, like as you're doing the inspection, correct?
Yeah, well, you would be, each of the inspectors in the region would have their own tablet, but they'd all be connected to the same main database. So you could download all the sites in the whole state, not just in your region. And the updates that you made would go right back into the main Tempo database. There is only one Tempo database, right? You don't have one in each region, right?
Right.
Right. Okay. So we drilled down and we saw some of the data that got downloaded from the registration system, and there's a whole bunch more associated with the release detection and the corrosion protection and all that. But I want to show the diagram function here as well. So this function is the graphical representation of what we saw. We saw that there was one tank that had 3 compartments, and then there was a single compartment tank that had off-road diesel. And the blue here are indicating the tank top sumps, and the colored circles are the fill ports for the tanks. So if we had previously visited this site and we saw these indicators, okay, this regular fill port had a cracked spill bucket, and the other compartments of the tank, the sumps were full of water, that would be the first thing that we would check and to indicate, to find out, did they come into compliance with what they were cited for in the previous inspection. And this inspection may have been done by the inspector who's currently at the site, or maybe another inspector. So the site diagram will actually travel with the facility from inspection to inspection. And even if the site is installed in March of 2016, the installation diagram will follow for all the compliance inspections, and then will be available at the closure inspection, 20 years down the road or however long that would be. So the system is going to allow you to make modifications directly to the diagram while you're in the field. So if we check all the sumps and then there's no more water in the sumps, we can delete this note that we previously made. If we find that maybe there wasn't 2 dispensers here, but there was actually 4 dispensers, we can add new dispensers and position them and indicate where they are. If we find that this cracked spill bucket has been replaced, we can delete that note. Maybe we find that there's a secondary fill port for this off-road diesel tank. We could identify where the fill port is, identify how the piping runs from one fill port to the other, and then indicate any issues that occurred here. So maybe there's a violation here where this particular newly installed fill port doesn't have a spill bucket. And what I'm doing here is typing on the keyboard here because I'm not running on a tablet. If I was running on a tablet, I would have a keypad similar to this, much bigger on the the tablet. It takes up most of the screen, and it looks more like that, but across the whole screen. And it depends on whether it's Windows 10 or Windows 7 and all those things. But we can also, if we have the pen, we can directly write a note here. I'm using a mouse, so it's not going to work out well. But usually you could use this sort of a function to say no spill bucket. And this is faster when you have the tablet pen as opposed to a mouse. So, we've made a note about this violation. So we'll save the diagram and move on to the compliance function. So here, if we look at the report here and we see, okay, let the system calculate compliance for this site, we see that the system thinks that the site is grossly out of compliance with no CP tests and no line leak detector tests and no tests on the ATG. And the reason why it's calculated all these values is that we haven't entered any data yet. So if we go into the compliance function and take a look, for instance, at release detection, we'll see, okay, here's those 3 compartments, and then here's the off-road diesel tank. We can go into the monthly monitoring and say, okay, for their monthlies, maybe they passed all the tanks all the month, but we can just do that simple, or maybe they have none. We can do the simple copy to all function where we identify that they're all the same. But maybe if they had all passed, except for maybe this site had a couple of failures and maybe an inconclusive, and if they didn't keep enough product in the tank, maybe they had a couple of months of low level. So what we have is at least 8 out of the 12, and the top 2 pass. So the site is, as in violation of some of the regulations, but they're actually not out of compliance with the SOC release detection compliance measure, because they've got 8 of 12 passing results with the last 2 passing. If one of these last 2 was a low level or inconclusive, then they would be out of compliance with the SOC release detection. But the system is taking all that into consideration and making those determinations. So if they had these failures and they failed to report the failures, for example, they won't just get cited for the 43D that we saw for ATG not having 8 of 12. They'll also get cited for 28050, failure to report a suspected release. So we'll save our tank release detection values and move on to piping. So for the catastrophic leak detection, the 3 gallon per hour leak detection, what South Carolina calls the big leak detection, we ask the questions about is the system operating properly, and when did they have their last function check date for the line leak detector. These 3 have mechanical line leak detectors, and that off-road diesel tank apparently has a European suction piping, so there isn't a requirement for that. So if they did their testing, let's say February 25th, 2005, it's been less than a year since their last function check, and it's been less than a year, since their most recent function check. So they're in compliance. If this was before February 5th, 2015, then they'd be out of compliance with the current. And even if this was recent, like today, because there's more than a year between the 2 function check dates, the state of South Carolina will actually cite them, and then they'll close the violation. But we'll leave it as if they're in compliance. So we'll copy this to the clipboard, assuming that the function check date was done at the same time the line tightness test date was done. So we can just paste that value in here, copy it across, specify that the equipment's operating properly. And now, as far as the release detection goes, the piping is in compliance with the release detection, and the tank, there are some violations, but now they're currently in compliance because they have passes for the last 2 months. I will just answer these questions before we go on. So the system, if you don't answer some of the questions and they're still marked red, the system is going to prompt you to answer those questions before you save. I'm going to stop for a second and just see if anybody has any questions about that leak detection function.
We good? No questions out there?
Oh, hey, Dan, it's Sam. Hey, can you go back, if we wanted to go back 3 records, we can build that in, correct?
3 years of, oh, I saw that on your website. I saw that on your website for interstitial monitoring. You're going to require 3 years of monthly.
Actually, we require it for all release detection records.
Oh, okay, for all types of, all release detection methods. Yeah, we could certainly do that. We could certainly add additional functionality to specify not just the 12 months that are being specified here. Would you actually collect the values for the 12 months, or would you just specify that they have the 12 months as a record keeping sort of function?
It would probably be easier if we would just specify what they're deficient in instead of collecting all the values.
Okay.
It just seems cumbersome to me to collect all the values for 3 years.
Yeah, if you have 3 years and they're all passed, you can just do this copy to all function, and they'll all be set, and then you could just set the ones that aren't in there. But it might be cumbersome for that. We can certainly make the screen more conducive to entering those values, or simpler for entering 3 years worth of values versus 12 months worth of values. Okay.
Yeah, so you can retrofit it for 3.
Oh, sure, yeah, and that's the thing to remember.
And then you mentioned some compliance stuff about the last two are passed, so they're good. I mean, we can write our own business rules for those kind of things, correct? Right,
and that's what we saw in that violation manager, is that the tweaking of the rules to say, okay, it's going to work not the way it currently works. It can work a little different, and we can make those tweaks. We'll figure out what the caveats are with your program and the way you want to enforce things. But then as time goes on, when we want to tweak things, it'll be easier to tweak with that violation manager tool. Cool.
All right, gotcha. And then one other one is, if we're entering things in the field here, facility information stuff, and we upload it, is it going to does this software have a main database that it's uploading to prior to going to
Yes.
Tempo?
Yes.
Okay. You're going to manage that, or your company manages that?
Yeah. We would design what that database looks like, and then we would write a procedure that once for instance, with the way this system works is you can start an inspection, and if you're not finished with it, you can just save the data and finish it the next day or finish it the next week. And this happens a lot in other programs that are working with closure inspections and install inspections. Not so much with compliance, but in some cases, if you're going to give somebody a break and say, okay, I'll wait till you fax me the results, and if it's over the weekend or whatever, the system will let you save the inspection and not complete it. You can synchronize your data, but it's not going to update the main database because the inspection's not complete. So it stores the information in the main database, and then there's no push across to the Tempo database. But that piece of code that copies from the inspection database to your main registration database, I could write that code, and I can work with your IT folks and the folks at who wrote Tempo? Was it CGI or one of those companies?
Right, CGI.
Yeah. So it could work with them, or work with your IT folks to validate what we're going to allow to go across from the main database to the Tempo database. So, for example, in South Carolina, most of the data goes, all the tank data and all the compartment data and the dispenser data goes across automatically with no changes. Some of the changes to the contact information require approval. very specifically, if there's a change of ownership at a facility that's determined by the inspector in the field, that data doesn't get updated automatically. Someone just gets an email that says, go look at this inspection report because the owner changed. And because they're not going to change the registration system, they're going to force the new owner to send in the notification form before they change that data. So, but we can print the inspection report correctly with the correct owner information on it, but then not push the data to the main database and wait for the notification form to come in and notify somebody that they should be looking for that to come in. All right. Any other questions? All right, I'll push on. Save. All right. So I'll go through corrosion protection quickly since we're running a little late. So for CP testing, tanks are easy. They're both fiberglass coated tanks. Most of the piping is easy because it's all fiberglass. The off-road diesel tank has steel piping, and let's say they have impressed current, an impressed current system. So they're going to require 2 CP test dates. So if one was 3 years ago, and the most recent one, actually we'll enter the the sump data first. So in the steel sump, since there may be metal components attached to the steel pipe, if it's an impressed current system, they're going to be covered by that. So we don't have to answer this question about the components. We can answer the question, but it's not required. It's not listed in red. But for the fiberglass piping, if they have some metal flex connectors or other components in the STP, we answer these questions. We find out if they're in contact with the soil or the water. If they are, they're going to require corrosion protection, and we specify the type of corrosion protection that they have. So we can do a copy to this tank and then copy to this tank, and copy column to this tank, and then copy column to this tank. All right, so we've entered the values for tank 1 and tank 2, we've left blank. So, and similarly for the, for instance, for the dispenser, under dispenser components, we could say, for instance, that none of them are in contact with the soil. Because the sump has components that are in contact with the soil or the water, we need CP test dates for those 2 as well. So we'll provide that value, and then when we go to the impressed current system, we can specify which tanks the impressed current system is connected to and enter the values, the important information about that impressed current system. And we can enter the CP test date information. So if our CP test is associated with these compartments and the test date is today, actually, we need this one too. And if the test date was today, and if they passed, and they did it in accordance with standard, then they should be in compliance with corrosion protection. So we save. So I'm going to move over to spill prevention real quick. So if they have spill buckets at all the sites, we indicated that the which was it, the off-road diesel one had a remote fill. So we'll enter information for the remote fill, and we actually said that they don't have a spill prevention device for that remote fill for the off-road diesel tank. And for the overfill control, I think we mentioned 280-20C1I, which said, oh no, I'm sorry, this was 20C1I was associated with not having a spill prevention device, which was a delivery prohibition violation. So why don't we say they're in compliance with overfill prevention? We'll save out of here. There's mechanisms for entering if they make a delivery to a tank that doesn't have a certificate, or if they're under delivery prohibition, the system will automatically cite violations. But we'll say that they didn't do that for either one of the for any of the tanks. And if there's a suspected release, there's also information that can be entered about the suspected release and which tanks and compartments it was associated with, and the release cause and the release source and that sort of thing. But we'll assume that there wasn't a release at this site. And so if we rerun the report, let's go. So one of the functions here where the system will calculate those violations is you can click on the violation and say, okay, show me the screen where the data is that supports that violation. So if I say go to screen here, it'll move me to this spot and I can enter the information associated with that. And if I go back to the report, we find that they have no, we didn't enter the updated insurance expiration date, so the financial responsibility was listed. This because they didn't report the missing ATG records. There's the ATG records, and here's that 20C1I for failure to prevent, for not having the spill bucket on that remote fill. And because that's a red tag violation, that it's cited that way as a red tag violation. So in the field, the South Carolina inspector would ask the owner to sign. Let's see, that guy's the tank owner. They'd use
Why do some of those have strike-throughs through them?
Because they're already closed, they have the strike-through through them, and they're closed because they had those 2 months of passing results. So if we said go to that screen, we see for the last 2 months, the records off the ATG are indicated as pass. So there's really nothing to send in because, they know they have the failures, they know they had the low levels and the inconclusives, but since the last 2 months passed, they're assuming there's no further documentation that needs to be sent into the department. If you wanted to, you could certainly rewrite a corrective action and say, specifically send in the next 3 months of, mail in the next 3 months. If you guys run your corrective action program differently than South Carolina, but South Carolina basically is saying, okay, they have the last 2 months have passed, so there's really no further information that we need to know that the release detection system is working correctly. So,
so essentially, it's kind of like a corrected deficiency, Aaron, I guess.
Correct,
right?
and the reason that it gets cited and closed, one is to let the site know that they were out of compliance, and the other one is to ensure that the SOC metrics are calculated correctly. Because even if, for instance, you show up at the site and the sump sensor is in the sump, but it's too high, and you end up putting the sump sensor down to the bottom, or an environmental service employee or the employee of the facility does that. When you leave the site, they're in compliance, but when you got to the site, they were out of compliance, and the EPA wants that to be counted as a out of compliance with the SOC release detection measure, because before you got to the facility, they were out of compliance, or when you were at the facility, they were out of compliance. You can also, for instance, if with this no financial responsibility, if from inside the office, they could have sent a enforcement letter saying, hey, you haven't sent in your insurance renewal things, in which case on the NOV we're about to generate, we don't want to give them another 30 days or 60 days to come into compliance or whatever it is. So you can say, set this violation as already in enforcement. And because it's already in enforcement, it's not going to print on the NOAV, or it's going to print with language that says this violation was cited previously and the due date on the previous citation is still valid, or something to that effect. So there's options here to modify what's going to print on that violation. And if, for instance, in this case, you didn't want this violation to be closed, you could say set the violation open, in which case you could put in a note like provide next 3 months of, or whatever is the appropriate additional corrective action. So at that point, the facility owner would sign, as we said. I think I did that already. No. Yeah, we could have the B operator sign, so Ted Bryant. And I'm signing again with the mouse, so it's messy, but you would hand the tablet over to the owner and they would sign with the pen, just, like a FedEx kind of thing. Save, and then if you view the notice of violation, it generates the notice of violation as a PDF document and presents it. So here's the owner information, here's the violations that we cited. This was the red tag violation, so it says it requires immediate action and that will impose delivery fuel prohibition, and that's the failure to equip the site with a spill bucket, that tank with a spill bucket, and that was the off-road diesel tank. And then the part 2, which they have the 30 days to come into compliance with, we see there's the failure to conduct release detection with an ATG, and it lists each of the tanks that's out of compliance. So for instance, for the ones, here's the note where we said provide the next 3 months, and it's saying follow the corrective actions for tank 1. Oh, it says it was closed for tank 1. Oh, it's closed for the regular unleaded compartment, but it's open for the super premium compartment. And then here is that citing of 28050 failure to report a suspected release. And then we list the important dates for that site. So they had a CP test, so 3 years from now they need another CP test because we entered today as the current CP test. And then their function check date for the line leak detector was 2016, and they don't have a suction 3-year test because that suction piping was European suction. And this the signatures. So this is what in South Carolina they deliver on site in order to accelerate the enforcement process, which is really nice because now they don't have to track the owner down in order to try and get this information. They can deliver it to the whoever's available on site, and a lot of times it's the operator, so it works out real well. Any questions associated with the South Carolina system?
I don't think we have. Sam, do you got anything?
No, nothing in particular for that.
Okay.
Cool. All right. So at the end of the inspection, you could choose this to-do list function, and what it does is it goes through the system and tries to find any questions that weren't answered. So we didn't answer this question about the shear valves in the dispenser, so we can say go to that screen. So there's a whole set of questions associated with shear valves and under dispenser containment and monitoring associated with the dispensers, but I won't go through all of that. Okay. So we generated the document, the notice of violation document. There's another document that's the inspection report. And the nice thing about the inspection report, it actually shows all the data that was collected during the inspection. So all the violations that were cited, all of the equipment definitions, all the contact people, the result of the inspection. So if we look through here quickly, it's all of that information that we saw on all the screens is available here. And usually this isn't something that would be printed. Sometimes it's emailed to a facility owner, which is nice because they get the diagram at the bottom. And a lot of times if the facility doesn't refer to the tank number is the same as the department, it's nice to have them, if they see, okay, tank 2 was out of compliance, it's simpler for them to understand which one was tank 2, especially at, a big fueling station that has multiple tank pads and multiple dispenser canopies and that sort of thing. So, all right, so I'm going to move on to the Idaho application. So this application was designed very specifically for the South Carolina UST program. We're going to move on to one that was designed for the state of Idaho. Okay, so similarly, there's a whole bunch of inspections. In Idaho, we only do compliance inspections. They have a different LUST program that handles closures and all that sort of stuff. But this very similar to what we saw in South Carolina. Here we see the list of facilities that are scheduled to be inspected. We can reschedule an inspection for a different date or a different time. We can delete an inspection. If we're going to a particular site, we can just say we want to look for directions to that site or from that site. So we see that if we're at that site, and for instance, maybe we get to that site and we find, they're getting a delivery or the site's been dug up or whatever, for whatever reason an inspection can't be done. You can find sites that you had planned that are close by or, close to maybe a regional office, or if you need to get back to a regional office, you can use the directions that way. And these distances are just being calculated based on the latitude and longitude we have for each facility. So like, for instance, this Costco, we don't know the latitude and longitude, so we can't calculate the distance to that site. But since a lot of the tablets out now have a built-in cellular radio, we could still do the directions function where we're passing the address from the inspection tool to Google Maps in order to get directions from that site to another site or to a regional office. All right. So we can also take a quick summary view of what's going on at the facility. We can see the currently in use tanks and the piping and the contact information and the phone numbers. We can also see the closed tanks, just a summary view of that information. So if we're out in the field and we're show up at a gas station we haven't previously scheduled, these can be scheduled in that back-end system with the scheduler, but they can be also scheduled directly on the tablet. So we can take a look and say, okay, maybe we want to look in a particular regional office and we want to look for, what's a good one for these guys? Blackfoot is one of the sites in the Pocatello regional office. So maybe we're looking for the Blackfoot Chevron. We can find that site. If we're, for instance, in the town of Blackfoot and we're going to go to Airport Road and we're just planning, we could say, okay, well, we're going to be on Airport Road, and we know there's a lot of sites on Airport Road. So, these set of sites and this indicator of when the last inspection was completed will help us to plan what needs to get done next. And you'll see that these dates are old because this copy of the database that I have is old. They're, State of Idaho is up to date with their 3-year compliance inspections. You can also specify specifically, for instance, if the end of your 3-year cycle is August 8th, 2016, you can say, show me all the sites in my region. Show me all the sites in my region that require inspections before the deadline, which is nice because, if there's only a handful of inspections left and you're towards the end of the deadline, they're very easy to find which ones still need to be inspected. And you can also look up, right now it's only looking up sites where they have tanks that are either in temporary closure or currently active, but you can also
I got a question.
Sure, go ahead.
I got a question real quick. You just said something about the end of the 3-year cycle. I'm just curious, since you have some knowledge in some other regions, we're in Region 6 here, you said, by putting inspection date at the end of the 3-year cycle. Technically, they actually go by the last inspection date.
Right, and that's the way.
Yeah.
That's the way a lot of the states I work with do it, but there are. I know Connecticut basically has a 3-year window, and they get a lot of flack from the EPA for this because they inspect all
Boy,
the
do they.
well, they get a lot of issues. Well, in Region 1 they do anyways, because what they do is they say there's a 3-year cycle, and if a particular site is inspected at the beginning of the first 3-year cycle and then towards the end of the second 3-year cycle, then it's more than 3 years between inspections, and then they get into trouble with the EPA. But I think a lot are moving more towards making a determination to say, okay.
Well, I was just curious about how some of the other regions were doing it, because that's the way we first interpreted it, and we get a lot of flack for that. And so anyway, for not having a window like that, you mean? Yeah, because we were doing it within the 3 years. As long as we did it within from this date to this date, we all got them done. We considered it was in the 3-year cycle, but they actually say that it's from the last inspection date. So I was just curious. Yeah, I know the state of Idaho that the program that we're looking at, they actually do the 3-year window like you guys are doing, as opposed to 3 years from the current. And, I think they're. Yeah, well, we had to change midstream. Yeah, maybe your EPA region might be a little more stricter than theirs. Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yep, you're welcome. Okay, so I think that's all we've got for scheduling. And when you do the scheduling function, you can always go in and look ahead of time and say, okay, show me what's at this site. Show me the tanks that are in use, and show me the permanently closed tanks and the permanently closed pipes at the site. You can also identify a whole set. So if I wanted to say, okay, I'm going to inspect all of these sites in American Falls, or get a query that restricted the whole set, you could check them all and then say schedule all the checked facilities for some date in the future. If you were going to go to a particular town, especially if it's a remote town and you want to get a whole bunch done and not drive out there 3 days in a row, that's a good way to go about doing it. Okay, so I wanted to take a quick look at an inspection at the state of Idaho's process, which is very different from what happens in South Carolina. So you'll see that the compliance screens are different. So if I drill into the financial responsibility here, I can see here's my CFR 280 regulation, here's my violation, here's my required action, my note, which is the same set of information that South Carolina has, but in Idaho, the compliance isn't calculated automatically the way it is in South Carolina. And I didn't show in South Carolina, but the inspector has a lot of options to override what the system calculates as far as what the compliance is. They can add and delete violations and add new compartments and do a whole bunch of other functions. But we'll go in and just do a quick set of entries so we can see, if, let's make that. The compliance entry is very different here. So if they have an overfill alarm, we can enter that. If they have an ATG and all their records aren't available, they're going to specify that. So, we have one failure here. If they have pressurized piping, they're going to get asked one set of questions. If they have U.S. suction piping, they're going to get asked a different set. So here there's, well, what do we fill for? So when an inspector in Idaho goes out, they actually require the B operator to go with them during the inspection to meet them at the inspection and then do the whole walkthrough. So the walkthrough with the operator showing him, okay, this is what we have listed for your equipment. We have you listed as having, for example, pressurized piping with a line leak detector that
does both the catastrophic and the monthly release detection function, and you are required to do to have a line tightness test, and you're required to have a line leak detector installed. If they don't have their leak detection records for that, they can be cited. And as they're going through, they're talking to the operator, showing him, okay, these are what your requirements are. This is the sort of equipment that you have. At the end of the inspection, they'll generate what they call a management plan. So if I click on this plan function, it indicates for this specific site, for instance, tanks 4 and 5, they have an ATG, and they have a line leak detector for the piping from tank 5, and they have US suction on tank 4, and that tank 4 we just indicated had a high level alarm as their overfill prevention function. This lists each of the tanks requirements for, or each of the things that the operator needs to do to keep those tanks in compliance based on the equipment at the facility. So this is a document that they'll actually print for the operator, have him sign the bottom of the document, or have him sign electronically here with the inspection tool, and then they'll have them study this document and then take a quiz associated with the requirements for that specific facility. So and they actually use the tablet to run the quiz. So I don't know why it's taken so long, but the quiz is I guess it's calculating. Oh, I know why. Because this specific person is assigned to so many facilities is why it's taking so long. And when they run the quiz, they actually run the quiz for that person, and then the quiz questions aren't dependent just on the facility that they're at, but all the facilities where they're assigned to be either the Class A operator or the Class B operator. So it goes through and calculates some set of questions that are appropriate for that person. So in this example, they're asking about corrosion protection for tanks. So at least one of those facilities, they've got steel tanks. So who knows the answer?
I would hope one of our inspectors does.
Yeah, corrosion. Yeah, and that's the easy one. So they go through the process of answering all the questions, and if they pass at the end, they get certified as being an operator. And Idaho actually did this originally for all the operators with this tool. Now they have a website tool, but they use this function to retest the operators at a field inspection because of that requirement that the EPA has to be retested. So, for new operators that are
Is that one of the 10 Loretta gives questions?
So if we go in and we answer the question and we answer it incorrectly, when we say submit answer, it's asking us what doesn't have to be protected from corrosion, the fill pipe and the vent pipe. The system will actually tell us, oh, you got the answer incorrect, but this is the correct answer. So it's a teaching tool also for the inspectors while they're in the field. So, all right, close. Okay, so they've gone through with the operator, given them the management plan and given them the quiz, and then they'd go in and cite the violations. The state of Idaho actually follows the EPA penalty policy. I don't know if I haven't run into another program that follows the EPA's penalty or field citation policy, but they'll actually have the ability to cite a field notice of violation and apply a penalty at the time of the inspection. They use it very sparingly, and it's more of a enforcement threat than it is something that they use often. They only use it for repeat offenders that have, have received formal warnings over and over again. So they can send, similar to South Carolina, they can cite an informal warning, which means you're out of compliance, but you don't need to send anything to come into compliance. A formal warning meaning that you're out of compliance and you need to send in documentation to prove that you've come into compliance. And then a field notice of violation that says when you send in your documentation that you're in compliance, send in the penalty amount as well. So
on that note, I had a question that I had written down, and it kind of applies to this.
Okay.
When it comes to compliance history on facilities, is that something that will populate with this report as well? Showing like in the past inspections they had violations, is that something that will be, will it alert us, by the way, this has come up in the past?
That's a good question. I'm gonna, why don't I just say save? So here, this is listing the past compliance failures that this site has had. So for every facility, the violations, I don't know, so tank 4 and tank 5 had spill bucket problems at the last one. Also, it'll list the inspection date and the inspection result. And if the inspector made a comment in this inspection notes field, that note will print. And in Idaho anyways, and some of the other states I work with, they usually put very detailed inspection notes. If there's something very specific detail that should be looked at the next inspection, they'll enter it in the inspection notes, and then that information is available. And I didn't look at this first, but the inspectors in Idaho, this is what they would probably look at first before they started the inspection process, as to what they were out of compliance with the last time. So
for previous inspections, like before we were to get a system like this, it would be able to pull old NODs and NOPDPs or compliance orders and populate what they had, or it would just be from here on?
That would have to work out with the IT folks there and you guys to figure out, that's something that we certainly could do, import that old data or just download that data from the main system directly. We do that in not North Carolina, New Hampshire, where if there's any enforcement events for a facility, that whether they're UST or non-UST consent orders or enforcement letters, or they call it a letter of non-compliance in New Hampshire, for any environmental program, that information gets downloaded to the tablet and it's available. But it depends very specifically on the integration that we do with your data. But yeah, that's a great suggestion. Okay, so at the end of the process, we're going to call this a partial inspection. Okay, and then save and save again. So the system's generating that enforcement letter. And what did I miss? Oh, I didn't do that right. Let's see. Okay, so the system generated that enforcement letter and generated the inspection report, and the management plan was saved. In the Idaho application, if we look at the diagram, this is a similar diagram to what we saw before. One of the nice functions here is that you can actually use this diagram to navigate. So if you're looking at tank number 5, you can say go to tank, and the system will move you directly to tank number 5, and you can enter compliance information, go right back to the diagram. If this dispenser, for example, had some compliance information that needed to be entered, you could say go to dispenser, enter the data directly, and then go right back to the diagram and navigate that way, as opposed to navigating by choosing the items from the list. So save, cancel. Let's close. Well, let's say save again then. Okay. So every time you save at the end and you say it's completed, it regenerates all the documents to make sure that they're up to date with the data that's been entered. Oh, and I forgot to do something. So one more thing that you can do is you can go in and attach photos associated with a facility. So we could call this on-site photos. And with the tablets, the specific model of tablet and a lot of the different tablet models, if a photo is taken with the tablet, we can automatically attach it to the inspection that's currently open. So it's a nice functionality where you don't have to then download from a camera or find the files on the tablet and then import them in the way we're doing. They kind of automatically get attached, which is nice. So on-site photo, save, and you can go in and categorize them all if you want. All right, so we went in, generated all those documents. One thing that you can also do is if someone wants a copy of the document, you can print it, of course, if you have the mobile printer, but you can also use this email functionality and email the document directly. So the people who show up in the list are the people who have email addresses at that site, the owner, or in this case, the environmental director. In Idaho, Christy Lauder is the you can email it to the supervisor, or you can email it to yourself. Christopher Bowe is the inspector, or you could just type in an email address if someone who doesn't already have an email address in the system at that site wants a copy of the email. And you can check this to CC yourself and send it via Outlook, or you can send it directly as well without Outlook, but when you send it via Outlook, you have more options to do BCC and other functions, make it into a meeting notice or whatever. So, all right, so if we saved, all right, so that inspection's a failed inspection. I'm gonna hit the synchronization function. And so what's happening now is all the data that we changed, any sites that we scheduled, these documents we've created, they're all getting pushed up to the main system through the synchronization process. While that's happening, I'm going to stop for any questions to see if anybody wants to ask any questions about this specifically. All right, cool.
Well, I was wondering, okay, so this doesn't have to have an internet connection if I'm still doing this?
In order to do this function, the synchronization function, it does need to be connected to your network.
Sophisticated. They don't have a lot of detail.
Right. Yeah, and you can take this tablet out into the field with no internet connection. Schedule new facilities, enter data. Some of the functions won't be available, like we saw that the driving directions function. That wouldn't work. If you're going to a specific facility and you can capture GPS coordinates because the GPS device is built right into the device and you don't need an internet connection for that. But if you wanted to view that on a map, specifically, you wouldn't be able to use this mapping function. And actually, one of the nice functions about the being connected to the internet is you can also find out the elevation of a particular site. Wow, it's high. The elevation for a particular site while you're in the field, but that's getting the data from the U.S. Geological Survey, so you have to have an internet connection in order to do that. But you can, any of these functions can be done back in the office, plugged into the network, or if you have the internet card built into the tablet, you can do it anywhere that you have connectivity. And even that synchronization functions, for example, the guys in South Carolina and the folks in Connecticut, they do that synchronization function from the field, so they don't need to go back into the office in order to file their paperwork. It gets filed from the field, which is really nice.
So they don't have many issues where they do this inspection in the field and then they can't sync until they get back, and when they get back, they've lost information. There's a way to save it and then sync it when you get back?
Right, and any inspection that you open, you can get partially through, enter some pieces of information, say, oops, say save, the inspection is not complete, you say, or even if you entered all the information, you can say save, and when it asks you is the inspection complete, you say no. When you go back, you'll see it still has the question mark on it as opposed to the X of that one that was completed. And you can restart that inspection. You can actually synchronize that inspection and then have it reassigned to someone else and have the data show up on another tablet, because the data, when you synchronize, gets stored in the main database. So, the answer is, unless there's some catastrophic problem with the tablet itself, the hardware stops working or something like that, folks don't lose their inspection results. So, all right, so that's the wrong one. This is the one. So this is Idaho's registration system. MobileWright Solutions actually built this system for them, but separate from the inspection system. But let's see. I need to find out what site we were at, and I think I wrote it down there. Okay, Maverick County Store. Rick. And it was in Soda Springs, right? There it is. All right. So, so here we see, this is some of the details of that. This is, the equivalent of your Tempo system is what this website system is, where they have all their contacts and their notes, and they process notification forms through this function, and they track their Lust events and all that. But the data is uploaded now from the inspection tool into that main database. You can go and take a look at that inspection that we cited, where we cited the release detection records not being available, and here's all those documents that we generated. We can drill in and look at that enforcement letter that we saw, and there's the violations, and we didn't get the signature of the owner, but the violations that we cited here is that field notice of violation in the informal and the formal warnings. They actually do their enforcement processing using this tool. If the compliance manager takes a look at this inspection and looks at the violations and looks at the inspection report and determines, something was cited incorrectly, or there's something more that needs to be done, or a document needs to be revised, they can make a note here in the inspection comments and then choose return to inspector, and that kind of gives feedback to the inspector, because the next time they synchronize, that inspection is going to come back, and then they're going to see that note to say, cite this violation instead of this violation, or whatever information is needed. Will provide a dialogue between the administrator and the inspector. If the inspection is going to stay on the server, then the violations can be managed from this point. So that formal warning that was issued today is due in March. If they don't come into compliance, maybe that gets upgraded to a notice of violation or a red tag or civil enforcement, and then different information is associated. So if they've uploaded to an NOV, then there's a penalty associated with that, or if there's civil enforcement, then there's a case and dates, and they can still process penalties put penalty amounts associated with that. They could also have that formal warning rescinded if the person if they go out of business and you can't find the owner, or if something was cited incorrectly or something like that. You can rescind the violation and provide a reason why the violation was rescinded. So that's more of the enforcement part of this tool. Any questions about that functionality?
Now, would you have the same types of capabilities in the South Carolina system?
In the South Carolina system, the enforcement is handled by their main system.
Okay, gotcha.
The inspection tool will cite the violations, will calculate the violations, cite them, and of course the inspector can override and add new violations and do whatever they want. But whatever the results are, those results are pushed to their main system, and then from that point, that system handles the enforcement and compliance tracking from that point forward.
Very good.
So, okay, so I haven't spoken much with the folks in your program. Is what you're looking for a inspection system? I'm assuming you're staying with your Tempo registration system, and you want an inspection system added to that, as opposed to having the Tempo system replaced. Is that right?
That is correct, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
we're looking for an inspection system and scheduling.
Okay. Because we're currently in the process of building a new registration system for the District of Columbia, and they have a lot of the same. I looked on the website, and they have a lot of the same needs that you folks have associated with notification processing. They have a worker certification program, a lot of the same sorts of functionalities, but I won't show any of that stuff since you're not looking to get one of those. So, all right.
So you said you had a what is Veritas? Where did she put it?
Yeah, they.
Okay.
We're going to find a place.
Never mind. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. Okay. So, all right, let me take a look at, before I go on, I'm going to just show a couple more states. We've only got, 5-10 minutes left. Is there anything specific that any of the inspectors is looking for that they haven't seen? With this, right now we've seen South Carolina and Idaho. I was planning on showing a little bit of New Hampshire and Connecticut and North Carolina, but if there's specific questions that you have or specific features that you think should be in the inspection system that you haven't seen, definitely ask a question or make a comment now if you can.
Do you have the ability, if you're out at a site, to add where they have any observation wells or any?
I haven't had a state ask for that. We're for the District of Columbia. In the future, we're building that we have a UST inspection tool that's going live in the next couple of months. But after that point, we're building a tool for lust inspectors, and they're specifically asking to be able to be out in the field and capture GPS coordinates of the monitoring wells at the facility. But to this point, we haven't done that.
And the same goes for, like, if you're at a closure and you're doing an inspection, can you make note of where the samples were taken from, at the depth they were taken from, and that kind of thing on your diagram?
On the diagram, you can certainly make those notes on the diagram. Let me see, who was I going to run next? New Hampshire. And on the diagram, you could certainly specify, here's a monitoring well function, but we're not really indicating where the coordinates are for that monitoring well. But, there's our different function. You could identify public drinking water wells and that sort of thing. But we're not really capturing GPS coordinates yet for those monitoring wells, but that's something we do want to do. And for a closure, you could certainly make a note, and the system is very flexible with the things that you specify. So you could just say text and say sample number 1 close, and identify specifically where this sample was, where the sample was taken from on the diagram, and you can specify the color of the text and whatever information, or you could specify that you just want to circle and you want to identify it by, S1 is maybe the sample number. So there's a lot of kind of free-form flexibility with the diagram. And you could actually, if you're handwriting is any good. I won't be able to do this with a mouse, but you could, for instance, use this to say, you know, my sample is right here, sample number 1, for instance. Yeah, that's the best I can do with a mouse. But with the tablet pen, you could make a good X and identify where something is on the diagram, but it isn't. The diagram isn't necessarily to scale, and it doesn't represent the GPS coordinates of the site exactly. Since we're on the diagram function, you know, that's the functionality that we see with the diagram. Is that going to work for me? I don't know. No, that's not going to work. Close. I'm going to show a little bit about the diagram. But
real quick.
Go ahead.
On that, will that be? You were talking about you want to do that in the future. Do updates come out for upgrades on that, or automatically, or? Yeah.
So there's a function that the system has where we can push an upgrade to the server, and then when the inspectors synchronize, it automatically will tell them, oh, there's a new upgrade. Choose OK to get the upgrade, and the upgrade will get applied automatically when you do the synchronization process, so you don't have to go to every tablet in order to do an upgrade. The way that I work is I usually do the implementation for a particular state. Then I have an ongoing maintenance contract with that state. So the state of New Hampshire that we did in 2006, we've on and off had maintenance contracts with them. We currently are actually contracted with 7 different state agencies right now to do maintenance and enhancements. And one of the nice things is, for instance, the site diagram function was asked for by the state of Idaho and the state of North Carolina, and those 2 states worked together to figure out what features and functions they wanted. And then when it was done, I was able to offer it to all the other states and implement it in their programs very cost effectively, because all the work was done. It was a matter of plugging it in and attaching it to their data, as opposed to rewriting the whole thing for each state. So there is some economy of scale that's benefits that we get from having multiple facilities, multiple states using the same application. So so this is a diagram that someone in North Carolina drew. I did draw this diagram. I don't know why it's all messed up. It's very strange. The background looks like it should be here. That is strange. All right. I don't know where it should be. Okay, I'm going to clear this diagram out and just do a quick, we'll clear that out too. So with this function, we can go in and find, so this is one of those functions where you have to be connected to the internet, but what it's doing is it's going out to the Google services and specifying that we want to get a diagram at these coordinates or at this address. And we can click here and identify, okay, this is where we want the center of the diagram to be. Maybe we want it to be on the top of this canopy. And we can zoom in or zoom out of the facility if you want to see what's near this facility as far as environmental interests go. You know, it looks like there's a school over here. We can identify the surrounding area by zooming in and zooming out. Zooming in, we can get a background for our diagram. Specifically, we'll take that and say save. And the nice part of this background, getting it from the internet, is that you know that now the diagram is oriented north, so you don't have to worry about the orientation of the diagram if you're planning or trying to look at that particular facility. And after it's imported, you can continue to figure out where you want to set this diagram, and then the shapes. You can import the tanks in the dispensers directly from the database, identified, and you click on the tank, it'll tell you what's in the tank and the capacity of the tank, and the details also about the dispensers. Oh, there aren't any details about the dispensers, but if there were, it would tell you about them. So, and you can orient the tanks and rotate them. You can specify, maybe you want to identify where the tank canopy or the dispenser canopy is here at this facility, rotate it, position it. Maybe we want to get rid of the text that says dispenser canopy, and then if we do a send to back function, now the dispensers are showing on top of the dispenser canopy so that we can see them. So there's a lot of different capabilities with the site diagram, and you can actually, if you made a mistake with the site diagram, you can do this undo function and go back and then redo and have the your actions undone. One of the nicest things I think about the site diagram is, though, that it travels from inspection to inspection, and it's not just a picture going from inspection to inspection, it's actually the different layers of the diagram. So there's a background of the diagram, which is this, there's the shapes, and then there's the foreground, and the foreground is anything that you've drawn on the diagram. So you put the diagram together and it's this, but you can have those separate layers stored separately and then downloaded separately, so that at the next inspection, you don't just have a picture of what was drawn previously. You have an interactive diagram where you can go in and modify the equipment. And if a dispenser was pulled, you can, if all the tanks were pulled, at least you have that backup diagram that says, okay, this is what it looked like before the work was done. There's a lot of other functions of the diagram. You can add roads and pipes and a lot of other things, but any specific questions about the diagram function? All right, so I'm a little bit past my time. I'll open it up and see, are there any other specific questions? Are you guys tired on Friday afternoon like I am?
Sam, do you have any questions? Other questions or anything?
No, well, just a few, Dan. So do you have any experience working directly with Tempo?
I don't. I haven't. Before you got on the call, we specifically had this conversation where I explained that all these other states that I work with have had environmental systems that I've needed to integrate with. Like we mentioned with South Carolina, they have their FS system, which is their environmental facility information system, and the state of Connecticut has the SIM system, their site information management system, but that run separately from the inspection system, but the inspection system pulls data from them and then the results get pushed back to them. And I imagine that's the kind of integration we would have to do with the Tempo system in order to get this done. So
yeah,
I haven't done it, but I'm hoping that it's possible. And we could certainly do a feasibility sort of thing where we identify, what's available in the Tempo system in order to provide some integration point. And to tell you the truth, most of the integrations that we're doing, we're kind of looking at what that registration system does and mimicking what it does, so that it looks like the change that you made in the inspection system was made in the Tempo system. And then that's right. The trick to get it to work, and sometimes that becomes too restrictive and we say, well, we want to do things in the inspection system that can't get pushed back into the Tempo system, and then in which case you'd have to either expand the Tempo system or we'd have to build another interface outside of the Tempo system, like we've done with a lot of programs to track compliance and to do enforcement and things like that.
How many years have you guys been doing this?
10 years.
Okay, now I'm assuming that you don't have to show me, but I'm assuming you have some management screens where we can go in and manage the full set of data to generate reports of SOC or that kind of thing.
Yeah, and again, it depends. If, for instance, in South Carolina, those SOC results from the inspections get pushed into their main database, and then the reports that were designed, 10 or 15 years ago to generate those SOC metrics for the state of South Carolina are run just as they were done 10 years ago, but the data is now being supplied by the inspection system instead of their main Oracle system.
Right, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in here, for instance, in Idaho, we wrote the backend database system, but we could certainly generate reports directly from the inspection results. So, for instance, this EPA statistics report, if I was to run this over the last 5 years or so, this is generating a PDF document based on the inspection results from Idaho. So, you're familiar with these measures. I think this is the sort of thing that we could certainly generate from the inspection results. From the compliance inspection, if we could get most, and just from querying the main database, we get most of that stuff. Because we do loss tracking for Idaho, we can get the other ones. So, but certainly these metrics and the values that are needed in order to calculate these metrics could certainly be generated by our inspection system.
Gotcha. So our public database is basically scanned documents where they take PDFs and scan them and public can view them. Do you guys have a way you could upload that directly in our electronic data management system? The reports that we would generate as once they're approved or whatever.
What's the name of the electronic document management system? Is it Documentum or Web Extender or Trim?
Did you just talk about putting them on the website, Sam?
Yeah, no, actually an EDMS.
Yeah.
Oh, we could do that pretty easily.
Okay.
That's not a problem. I don't see why we couldn't generate this report and then have it upload directly into our system. It's pretty easy. And not only that, the regions hopefully will go all electronic and sign in the field, and then they can upload both to our EDMS system and into Tempo at the same time, all electronically. That's the goal.
All right.
I don't really see a reason why I can't.
What if we have documents that need to be scanned in as like supporting evidence? You can scan it and then put it into this system?
Yeah, you can attach anything into the system. We looked at attaching photos, but when you choose add, you could choose any sort of document. It could be a supporting PDF document or a scanned TIFF document, whatever you would need. And we've done a lot of integration where, when this synchronization happens, in some cases, these documents that we've created go directly into the inspection database, and then we provide an interface to look up those inspection documents. But for a lot of the states we work with, when the synchronization happens, the data goes to the main database, and then the inspection documents go to some document management system, FileNet or Web Extender or Trim or.
We have FileNet, or we used to, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Connecticut DEQ has FileNet as well, and we have the integration with FileNet.
They have made some changes, so I'm not sure who they're using now, but we used to have it for sure.
Okay, yeah, and that's.
And we have interfaces for that too. Currently.
Good. Yeah. So the pushing and pulling of the documents is usually part of the integration project that we do in order to get something like this completed.
Any other questions?
So if you add a PDF or documentation to it, does it automatically go on the back end of the checklist when it's uploaded?
We have done that in the past where we went in and just did a function where we take like we saw with the site diagram that was attached directly to the back of the inspection report. We have done that with in Connecticut. photos that are taken are just appended to the bottom of the inspection report. In North Carolina, for example, this combined photos function is what they use, and they'll identify photos they want to include and which photos they want to exclude just by dragging and dropping. So maybe we want that set of photos, and then they do the save function, and it will take that set of photos and put them all in one PDF document, so it's less less files to keep track of. So then you can just view that document, and it'll have the list of inspection photos and any titles that you put on the inspection photos. I didn't name our inspection photos very well, but if you were to specifically say, those are the vent pipes or whatever, and the fill ports and the dispensers, those headings would be here.
The laptops that we're getting, they have photo capability. So
cool. Do you know what the model is?
What is it?
X-Motion V10.
X-Motion. It's not from motion computing, right? A different X-Motion V10.
I don't know. I just got the name of them. I was going to look them up.
Yeah, we didn't
look them up yet. I know they run off of Windows 10.
Okay. Yeah, and this system will run on Windows 7 or Windows 10, but not Windows 8. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I'll have to look up that model. It's a laptop and not a tablet?
No, it's a tablet.
Oh, it is a tablet. Okay, great.
Yeah.
And is it a pen based? Does it come with a stylus pen kind of thing, like a Surface tablet?
Actually, we don't know. We didn't order them.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, I just got the name over before we came in here of the ones we're actually getting, and I haven't had a chance to look them up yet. So.
Okay, yeah, because that's one thing for if you decide to go with this system, using the site diagram, it's doing it with the trackpad or something like that doesn't necessarily work well, and even doing it with your finger is very difficult. So if you have the pen, it's easy to resize and rotate things and to move them around on the screen.
We'll definitely find out quickly.
Yeah. So most of the Windows-based tablets come with a pen, but some don't. So it's just something to keep in mind when you do the ordering process.
Right.
Okay. I'm 15 minutes past time, but I'm definitely available for whatever, I can take questions all afternoon, but it's Friday afternoon, so actually it's only 2:45 where you guys are. It's 3:45 where I'm at.
Yeah. We're definitely interested, and I'd like to maybe have some conversations in the future.
Great. Yeah, and if there's any specific documentation or any kind of requirements that you need me to go through, registering with the state and all the purchasing sort of stuff, definitely let me know and I'll get ahead of it.
Let me, since you brought that up, what kind of ballpark figures are we looking at? Ranges, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you bet. From
full blown do everything to maybe something small.
Yeah, so to give you a range, we've recently we've done this for Rhode Island, which is the smallest state in the nation, and we've done it for North Carolina and South Carolina that are bigger than Louisiana. So in that range, it's been $50,000 to $100,000, no more than 100, no less than 50. So
okay.
And I think that probably would handle, I don't remember all the state agencies we've worked with, but as far as for a UST inspection tool like what we're talking about, I think that's the right range. And it depends a lot on the complexity of your inspection report and the complexity of the complexity of the integration and all that sort of stuff.
What are some of the I guess there's to yearly licensing fees? Is that something?
No, I don't usually. I don't have a licensing fee associated with it. But what I usually do is I want to do a support contract that
Gotcha.
so that we can, the first year that the system goes out is a lot of work, and the system goes out and is good, but it's not great. And then a year later, once we refine it a little bit, it's great. And then from that point forward, it's less expensive and less effort to have it run the way you want it to. And it all depends on what changes need to be made during the year. And a lot of times we start with something simple, and we're the next year, when we did this for New Hampshire, we did a simple UST inspection application, and the next year they expanded that a whole bunch, and we did AST inspections. And then the next year we did on-site emergency response sort of work. So it depends on what you want each year. But as far as the ballpark cost, I would guess for each year about half of what the initial cost is. Or less, I would say, and down the road is.
Well, the reason why I asked is I'm going to get asked when I ask for.
Oh yeah.
We've got some funding issues, but I think I have some ideas how to get around those. So I'm going to get asked that question, and I'm going to have to give them some ballpark numbers before they'll even consider going further.
Yeah,
so those are the reasons for my questions.
Yeah, that's the first thing I ask when someone says, you want this, and it's the first thing I ask is how much is it going to cost.
Right, exactly.
So, yeah.
We really appreciate your time. So what we've seen so far sounds like a perfect match.
Good. I'm glad to hear it.
I'd like to have some further discussion, and I'll definitely take it back to my management to see if I can come up with some money, because that's the first step.
Okay. I've got additional slides about the benefits and how it works, the technology slide, which I think no one in the program probably is concerned about. But here's my contact information. I'll reply to the meeting request that everybody accepted, so that everyone has this contact information. But inspectors or Sam or Isaac or anybody who has any kind of question, definitely email me or give me a call, and I'll be happy to answer if I can.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.